Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Week 8 of the Coalition League's Summer Split. I'm Random Minion Caster, and Week 8 means that we're actually in the finals here for the Silver Division. Now, the Silver Division is small. There are only 4 teams here, but they are nonetheless really solid teams who have put up huge fights against each other. And for the finals here, we've got Rawr Yordlez, #1 seed in the regular season, undefeated across their series here, have not dropped a single series yet, and they are sitting pretty here fighting for the throne. And against them, it's going to be HypE Esports, who were the 3rd seed in the regular season, only really beating out Glacial Academy. But in the playoffs, the story changed as they dispatched Pendulum Gaming, the 2nd seed, in a quick game, a quick series there to fight their way here to the finals, and now they'll be facing off against Rawr Yordlez. And as we hop into the series here, something to note is that we are going to be jumping straight into Game 2. Rawr Yordlez had to forfeit Game 1 here. So this means HypE is going to be starting this series with a 1-game advantage right off the bat here. There was no Game 1. We are straight into Game 2, and it is going to be Rawr Yordlez on the blue side, with Mr. Sarux in the top lane, I Never Fuiz in the jungle, Winter07 in the mid lane instead of the support position. In the ADC position, it's going to be Duero actually, so he's moved from mid to ADC, and for support, it's going to be Toika here. And for HypE Esports, they're going to be on the red side with a much more standard lineup. Rinks in the top lane once again, Non-Stop Brain in the jungle, Tommy Peppers ADC, Ray just Ao3ND as ADC, and support Fluff gets smashed. So HypE retaining their roster and lineup here. Yordlez switching things up, and that might have to do a little bit with why they had to forfeit Game 1. We'll have to see, and we're going to hop straight into picks and bans. Yordlez banning out the Kalista, Xerath, Maokai in their first rotation, Kai'Sa, Senna in the second rotation. So a lot of attention being paid to the ADC Ray here of HypE Esports, and Ray is usually the main damage source in their team fights here. And the Maokai gonna force Rinks onto one of his secondary picks, so most likely either the Teemo or the Orianna. And for HypE Esports, they're banning out the Volibear, Zac, Syndra, Nunu, and J4. So a lot of that into the jungle, a lot of that against I Never Fuiz. And for Rawr Yordlez, they really have threat in all their lanes here. We'll have to see how the ADC and mid position roll out, because usually it's Duero in that mid lane putting out a lot of threat. Winter is usually the support. So with that change up here, we'll have to see how that affects sort of the dynamic of the carries here for Rawr Yordlez. And in terms of picks, they're going to first pick Aphelios here for Duero. An interesting first pick, especially considering the nerfs which just came in this week here. Aphelios getting nerfed substantially with his Chakrams, the sentry gun there, being nerfed in terms of how long it takes to start up, as well as its range. Not necessarily the biggest nerf, but it will hurt the poke a little bit, as well as the zoning. The more important nerf, however, was to the Infernum here. Aphelios usually rushes the Infinity Edge and Runan's Hurricane, and Runan's Hurricane has huge synergistic effects with the Infernum gun specifically. It's AoE on top of AoE to make just a sea of flames here, and then nerf help to reduce the pass-through damage of Infernum, basically removing it altogether, as well as reducing the sort of cone and the area of effect of Infernum, especially with Runan's Hurricane. So pretty big nerf for team fights. We'll have to see if that affects the Aphelios first pick here for Rawr Yordlez. They're also going to pick up a set Morgana, Galio, and Olaf, so most likely that set for Mr. Sarux in the top lane. A very, very solid pick for him. We've seen him do very well with that. Morgana, normally, that's actually one of Winter07's favorite support picks, but given that he's mid lane, we might see a mid lane Morgana. We did see it in the, I believe it was Noxus Division with Web Hippo in the mid lane, so maybe we're seeing that and support Galio. That's a possibility, or more likely, or more traditionally, I suppose, a Galio mid Morgana support, and that will be an Olaf in the jungle there for I Never Fuiz. HypE Esports going with a really solid sort of AoE composition, but an interesting finish on that. They've got Leona Sejuani to start that off, as well as the Teemo for Rinks. They want to make sure he doesn't get banned out here, and with the Maokai banned out, Teemo is usually the default go-to champion for Rinks in that top lane here. And they finish off with a Kog'Maw and Ashe. So Kog'Maw did get buffed quite a few patches ago for AP Cog specifically. So maybe we're going to see an AP Cog in the mid lane for Tommy Peppers. It would fit his preference of having that sort of artillery in the mid lane there. Xerath, Ziggs, just to name a couple of champions that he likes to play into the mid lane there. And Ashe for Ray is a possibility as well. I think we have seen him play it before. Not as aggressive as what he likes to go with, such as the Kai'Sa or the Vayne, but still a really, really solid pick. And we'll have to see how that plays out, because compositionally right now, HypE looking really, really solid with their front line. They've got a lot of sort of range damage, not necessarily a lot of burst. Kog'Maw not known too much for his burst damage there, more just for the range and ability to poke things down, softening up Rawr before they fight. And for Rawr, they've got a really, really strong front line that just wants to run into the back line there. Galio just looking to get a taunt off. Mr. Saruk's on that set, going to be able to showstopper his way into the back line. Olaf with the Ragnarok, just charging back there, and with that chaos, we'll have to see if Duero can stay alive, and if he isn't targeted because they're trying to peel, he can pump out a lot of damage on the Aphelios. The Chakram damage not significantly nerfed, so in short range fights, Duero's still going to be able to pump up significant amounts of damage and just shred through the tanks of Leona and Sejuani for HypE Esports. So compositionally, HypE has to be a little bit careful. If the fight goes long and it does not end really, really quickly, I think HypE has the edge. But should the carries get caught out, then I think Rawr has easier backline access, has better people to run amok in the backline. So we'll have to see which composition really comes across. Both teams will be looking for sort of that late game advantage here. And with that, we are going to come onto the rift with the teams. So once again, on the blue side, it's going to be Rawr Yordlez. On the red side, HypE Esports here. And I mean, we could potentially see an invade. Both teams have pretty solid level 1 CC with the Morgana, with the Leona, but instead it's looking at we're just going to see a standard start. And again, just a reminder, this is game 2. Rawr forfeits the first game, so HypE actually have a bit of an edge. They can afford to play a little more dangerously. As for Rawr Yordlez, they'll probably play a bit passively here, knowing that they've already given a game up. And in terms of styles here for the two teams, Rawr Yordlez tends to play a little fast and loose because they tend to smash their lanes quite a bit. I don't know if they'll necessarily get that. And interestingly enough to note, it's going to be Tommy Peppers on the Ashe. So it's an Ashe mid and Kog'Maw ADC. A very, very interesting choice to switch up here. I don't think I've seen an Ashe mid for many a season. Used to be very, very popular back in Season 1, especially with Teleport. But he's running Exhaust instead, so we'll have to see how that one works out in the mid lane. I'm just trying to simulate the matchup here against the Galio. The range advantage will be good, the slow as well, but the problem is that Galio often uses Justice Punch to get into range, and with that taunt, he can get a lot of burst damage down onto the Ashe here. I think it will come down a lot to whether or not Tommy Peppers can survive the initial burst. If he does, he should be able to kite for days as long as Justice Punch is not available for Winter here. But one thing to note is those Winds of War do quite a bit of damage. We're already seeing Winter being forced back by Tommy Peppers here on the Ashe. Just the range advantage is going to be huge until he does unlock that Justice Punch here. He did take Winds of War level 1. And a lot of that MR resistance also not going to be very, very helpful for Winter here. So yeah, I think HypE did a good job in switching things up a little bit, because Ashe will probably have a pretty decent lane against the Galio. Instead, it's going to be a question of the bot lane here between Kog'Maw, Leona. Again, not a very common ADC we've been seeing here. Is very strong. Used to be known as one of the strongest late game champions. He's no longer necessarily the best late game champion, but still does shred through tanks incredibly quickly. Very safe topside. Mr. Strokes taking a lot of damage. Rings flashing in with the Ignite. Is the Poison and Ignite going to be sufficient? No, it's not. Mr. Strokes able to just barely get out alive for now. And that's going to be all the summoners blown for Rings here. He does not have Teleport. Once again, HypE running the no Teleport team here. And we've seen them pull it off before. It does give them a lot of lane advantages. So it looks like they are sacking the sort of late game macro play with the Teleport advantage for early game strength here. And we'll have to see if that does work out for them. Yordles generally do fare well in lane, but with without the combat summoners here, and the edge given by sort of the advantageous range matchups in the solo lanes, we might actually see HypE being the one to take that over. And if they are, it could be absolutely huge for them. A gank coming into the top lane here from Non-Stop Brain. Level 3, there's no more flash available, and that will be Mr. Starks going down. No question there. First blood going over to Rings. He might not have gotten the solo kill, the solo experience, and he might have had to burn both summoners earlier, but it does pay off, as it is going to be HypE Esports picking up first blood in the top lane there. And in the bot lane, normally I would have given this one over to Rawr Yordlez, no question. Fang Rui, an excellent ADC that we've seen, but now it's Duero, and he's been a great mid laner for Rawr Yordlez, but we haven't really seen him perform as an ADC before. So that's a very sort of a question mark lane right now to look at. That being said, they did get the counter matchup for the supports here. Morgana, usually considered one of the counters to a Leona. The Black Shield negating a lot of that CC, so they should still have a nice advantage here. I know if he's now looking for a gank in the bot side, but yes, he's going to find it a bit difficult here because HypE is not even past the river. They have been shoved under the turret. They're now trying to shove back out, so I know if he's going to go back to the jungle, going to continue power farming for now. And given the way both these compositions work here, if a team does get a bit of an edge in the laning phase, it will most likely translate to that mid game where both teams are looking to sort of pop off there. If it does run late, we'll most likely be looking at HypE to get the advantage in the late game with their double ADC composition here. The one thing to note is that a lot of ADC compositions do suffer in the mid game a little bit, as they do tend to have a lull while they're trying to build up their second item, complete their second item here. But the nice thing is Kog'Maw can sort of bypass that a little bit here. He does do a lot of percent health damage just off his W, so it does scale up instead with Rawr Yordlez's health. So it does not suffer quite as badly here in the mid game. Now we do see Fluff get smashed, going in aggressively. The back shield coming out on Duero, going to keep him safe. Stop the damage. The Chakram's just slicing out there. Oh, sorry, it wasn't the Chakrams, it was the Scythe instead. So Duero able to heal up, life steal up from a lot of those attacks there. So he's going to come out quite nicely out of the trade. It's going to be Ray instead taking a lot of damage. A lot of it actually from the minions as well. And so far, Rawr Yordlez enjoying the advantage in that bot lane, and that's the lane they're going to have to look at to sort of carry in the mid to late as well. The taunt coming out of Winter into the mid lane. He got the Justice Punch off, but this is the problem. If he doesn't have the burst damage, he's going to take a lot back. Exhaust coming out from Tommy. The flash as well. Can he get it? No, he can't. The minions are blocking him. He couldn't get past them. In the top side, Mr. Stark's ticking down as well. He's got the shield, but it won't save him from the damage over time of the poison. He's going to go down once again, and Rinks now 2-0 on this Teemo. We've seen Rinks actually take over on the Teemo. I personally hate the champion of Teemo, but you can't argue with how effective it is in the right hands. And Rinks' hands appear to be the right hands as he's dominating on the Teemo right now. And this is putting iNeverFreeze in a bit of a bad spot here. Where is he going to look to gank? His bot lane is constantly shoved out. He doesn't have a good angle to try and get onto Ray or onto Fluff get smashed. His mid lane is not really benefiting that much right now. We do often see Winter 07 not the healthiest. The poke provided by Tommy is able to keep him fairly low. Not a great lane to gank. He could pull it off the 2v1, but the issue is if non-stop Brain's in the area, well, then maybe iNeverFreeze and Winter aren't going to win that 2v2 necessarily. And into the top lane, well, it is a Teemo. He's already past level 6, so without the vision, they can't tell where the mushrooms are, and it's going to be very difficult for iNeverFreeze to look for a gank pattern without triggering one of those shrooms. Not to mention, Rinks with a 2-level lead right now is just liable to turn that into a turn around, pardon me, that 1v2 and pick a kill out of that while surviving as well. So most likely we're just going to see the junglers power farm quite a bit. Non-stop Brain, besides throwing that gank into the top lane, has just been farming quite well. Is not too far behind, just about one camp behind an Olaf, which is actually pretty impressive. Olaf can farm exquisitely quickly here. The lower his health, the faster he farms, so he can definitely clear camps incredibly quick. The Dragon is up. It is the Mountain Drake, so we're likely not to see a huge emphasis on either team to pick it up there. The one Mountain Drake not going to be super beneficial. And now we are seeing iNeverFreeze in the area. Will have that Scryer, will spot the ward coming down, and Fluff gets smashed, just barely dodging out the Dark Binding. But they're going to be safe. No possibility of a gank as they see iNeverFreeze in the Tribush there. And that signals iNeverFreeze to go for said Mountain Drake. Well, it's not the best Drake. Any Drake is better than no Drake here. It is free stats bonuses. He will be doing that in full vision of HypE Esports. They have a ward there in the pit, and the question now is, what is Non-Stop Brain going to do? They did spot him doing the Raptors there. Is he going to just run straight over to the Herald? Instead, no, he's gonna go for his Krugs instead. So no Herald trade over, and despite having slightly struggling lanes here, it is going to be Rawr Yordlez picking up their first Drake. Mr. Saruk's looking like he might go down once again here. Facebreaker comes out, but and again they trade flashes, but the movement speed buff from Rinks, is it going to be enough? He gets the last auto in, and that's going to be Mr. Saruk's dead again. And the flashes are coming out almost on cooldown here in the top lane, meaning that Mr. Starks almost never has that up. Non-stop Brain could just look to continue camping that top side, getting himself some free assists here, or he could just let Rings continue to just run amok there, and it is going to be on Rawr Yordlez to try and stem the bleeding in that top lane here. Already almost a 2k gold advantage right now to the side of HypE Esports, and the majority of that is just from that top lane. You can see 1,900, almost the full 2,000 there, solely in the top lane. The bot lane is down a little bit, somewhat expected. Kog'Maw not necessarily the strongest of early game champions, especially with the support counter matchup. And mid lane, not a huge difference either, just the slightest bit of CS advantage for Tommy Peppers, which is perfectly fine. He's an ADC. He's just looking to scale here. He's not looking to dominate a lane. And again, the pressure is on to Winter to try and win that mid lane before Ashe really scales up here. And one thing to note about this double ADC composition from HypE Esports is that generally when you do see a double ADC composition, they sort of have to compromise somewhere, be it on their magic damage or their tankiness or their utility and CC. But with this composition from HypE, the only thing they're compromising on is burst damage here. They've got a great ton of magic damage from the side of Teemo and a bit of hybrid damage as well from Kog'Maw. So they get to sort of bypass that sort of weird weakness, and they've got a lot of tankiness here and CC with Sejuani and Leona. We did see I Never Freeze just pick up the Herald as well, so Yordle's playing the macro game instead of going for the lane advantages, instead of going for kills here. Not the playstyle that we normally see from them, but nevertheless a very effective playstyle, and one that usually conventionally people say is the better thing to do, is to focus on those objectives. Mr. Saruk's getting that sweeper in the top lane here, clearing out all the shrooms as fast as he can, but he's still taking a lot of damage just from the poison here of Teemo. Anytime he goes in, Ring's just able to punish him, and he's just never ever in range to get the pull off. And again, Ignite coming down the poison as well with the Gnasher's Tooth. Mr. Saruk's now 0-4-0 right here. I'm not even sure that I Never Freeze could turn this if he does show up in that top lane. That 3-level lead from Rings is just absolutely massive here. And for Rawr Yordlez, yes, they do want to focus on the macro a little bit, but I don't think you can afford to continue letting that bleed happen in the top lane. We are going to see first turret going down most likely from that top side, despite the Herald being picked up from I Never Freeze here, and I just don't think they can leave that alone too long. Winter now is significantly up in levels. He's level 9, the highest on his team by a long shot. Does have the righteous, the heroic entrance, pardon me, available, and I think he should look to drop that on the top side here, out into the top lane with I Never Freeze, force a 3v1 if they have to. Herald being dropped into the mid lane by I Never Freeze there. They're looking to try and get the first turret of the game, but they don't have quite enough damage. Tommy Peppers is now here just chasing them off. Going to continue clearing this out. Non-stop Brain aggressively going in. He flashes, throws out the Glacial Prison, but unfortunately it lands on I Never Freeze. And true to his name, he does not freeze as he turns his Ragnarok on there. Going to completely ignore the CC altogether and just be able to power run his way out to safety. Rinks now with the Ninja tab he's completed as well. Can easily pop his movement speed boost here for himself, the move quick, and that's going to allow him to dodge not only the pool but the face breaker as well, just completely running out of range. Mr. Saruk's just no way for him to effectively try and trade against Rings here. We see the poison coming out. Face breaker again. He takes a tower shot. Has to be careful though. The Teemo poison is going to mean that anytime he does apply it, he is going to take damage from the turret. And we now see I Never Freeze looking to come in from behind. Can he find him? The sweeper is on, but he's still going to walk into the shroom, and no Ragnarok available means he will get slowed. Will not be able to get the gank off. And first turret going the way of HypE Esports. They continue to snowball their lead, especially in that top lane, where Ring's now looking to double Mr. Saruk's CS at the 13-minute mark. And while the global gold does not look super one-sided. When we do take a look at that top lane specifically, that's more than double his gold right now, and shows in the items as we already see the Haunting guys coming through, the build towards Leandri's coming out here. You look over to Mr. Syrux, what does he have? He's got a pair of Merc Treads and a Bilgewater Cutlass, a bit of sustain, but not enough health or not enough resistances either, so he's just gonna die completely. I know if he's opting for the Ninja Tabbies instead, means that if he does gank that top lane, he will be eating almost the full damage of the poison here. So they don't really have anybody to deal with Rinks, and he might look to get into the other lanes potentially here, just clearing out the river. And for all the advantage of having that top side, Nonstop Brain paying zero attention to neutral objectives. I know if we're gonna pick up the second Drake of the game for themselves here, it's gonna be the Inferno Drake, a much more important Drake. It does give them a bit more boost to their damage. The only issue so far is that we haven't seen any damage really coming out from Rawr Yordlez. And that just makes me question, is this a result of HypE outplaying them in the drop phase, or is this because of that change in their players and their positions here? Not having Fang Rui around might be hurting them a lot more than we expected. That being said, Duero doing a great job in the bot lane here. He is up CS, has already completed the Infinity Edge. He has a lead down here. We'll have to see if Rawr Yordlez can capitalize on that in the mid lane. Winter's been doing a great job farming as well. Does have the Proto Belt now as well as the Justice Punch, so we could potentially see easier engages for him onto Tommy Peppers there. And topside, we did see He's trying to throw yet another gank, but it feels like a little too late here, as he's already so far behind that he's not able to find any ganks really onto Rinks. Rinks able to just move quick, take the Blast Cone over to safety there. The Ragnarok being popped by Neverfuiz means it won't be available for his next gank. And interestingly enough, both teams just opting to continue their 1v1s here. They're not looking for a fight. Mr. Syrux using the show stopper. He's putting a bunch of damage, but it won't be enough. He's gonna flash out, but the poison was already applied. It's gonna take down the Ignite, gonna finish him off once again there. And with the way the lanes are going, like I said, HypE does scale great into the late game with the sort of double ADC, triple on-hit composition they have. They are the ones who can afford to sit back and let this laning phase go long. Rawr Yordlez on the other hand have to look for something to happen, and they might find it here as the Justice Punch connects onto Tommy Peppers. He flashes away, but the axes are coming down. The reckless swings come across. The true damage is sufficient, and finally, the Rawr Yordlez get themselves on the board. It is going to be Neverfuiz picking up his first kill there in the mid lane. Now Toika gonna eat the Zenith Blade. The stun looking to come across. Can they find it? Solar Flare doesn't land on anybody, and it is gonna be the Blades coming out here, whipping out. It is not the Chakram, so we're not going to see that huge burst of damage, but Duero taking basically no damage there. And Rawr Yordlez not having to burn any summoners. You look across the board, it was Fluff initiating that one, but it is going to be Ray blowing both his summoners instead to keep alive. Neverfuiz now having to burn his flash, try and get out. The Undertow comes across. Is it going to be enough? No, it's not. The poison it takes down. He goes down, and it's going to be instead HypE benefiting from the Herald that Rawr Yordlez started. Nonstop Brain going to be able to smite that one down. It is going to go to Rinks instead. He's got the Herald. And honestly, it's not a bad choice giving to him. He can just force this top lane inner turret here, and there's nothing HypE can do about it. Bot side though, Duero looking to be able to get this bot side turret. We did see Ray going back to base. They've abandoned this outer turret here, and Rawr gonna even out the turret score. The gold lead, again, not huge, only 3,000 right now. Almost all of that sitting, more than all of that sitting in the top side here, because the bot lane has started to see a bit of a deficit. And it's up to Rawr Yordlez. For them to look for a win, they have to start making plays. We are solidly into the mid game right now. Turrets have gone down on either side of the map. Mid lane turret also extremely low. You can see it's just literally a sliver of health, less than 100 health on that mid lane outer turret there. They could probably knock it down with a sneeze, and that would open up the map even more. And Rawr Yordlez needs to start being a little bit more proactive here. Aphelios might be able to outscale, but I mean, it's questionable against an Ashe. Ashe generally considered to scale fairly evenly against the Aphelios here. And with the Kog'Maw and the Teemo as well, I just don't see Duero out damaging all of them in team fights here. Now we do see Rinks coming down into the mid lane here, looking potentially for a gank. Not the scariest thing to see a Teemo just running at you here. Unfortunately, Winter 07 on Galio. That is the magic resistance tank. Did build 2 null magic mantles. An interesting choice against the Ashe, but to be fair, he didn't really need too much defense against Tommy Peppers there. Was doing fine just farming that up from range. So having that much magic resistance though does mean that he'll be perfectly fine against the attempted ganks of Rinks here into the mid lane. And they're going to drop the Herald, interestingly enough here. There's no backup. Looks like they're just going to use Herald to distract while they go for the Cloud Drake instead. And it's kind of terrifying if you think about how many Cloud Drakes they could potentially pick up. 4 Cloud Drakes here is the cap for HypE Esports. That's a 40% ultimate cooldown reduction. And while you're thinking solar flares are scary, so is the mushroom farm from Rinks. He can just spit those mushrooms out non-stop here with that cooldown reduction on that ultimate. And before, normally we talk about mushroom farms, he can build a full-on mushroom plantation here with a 40% cooldown reduction on those mushrooms. Now we are seeing a bit of a group up into the mid lane here as people are starting to leave their lanes. They've sent Tommy Peppers down to the bot side. They're going to leave him farming. They want him to be that late game skilling ADC here. Ray being called into the mid lane instead. And while they try and hold this off between him and Rinks, should not be a problem whatsoever. We are past the 20-minute mark. Baron did just spawn, and we are seeing double Blade of the Ruined King on the side of HypE Esports as well as Liandry. So their team could burn down Baron incredibly quickly at the 20-minute mark. Doesn't look like they're going to go for it, but that's something that Rawr Yordlez will have to keep in the back of their mind here, that Baron is never truly safe. We are seeing Mr. Serux grab onto Fluff, get smashed, but he's taking so much damage from Tommy Peppers. The Solar Flare comes across to secure the kill, and Fluff gets smashed. Going to be able to pick up a kill as well. The first person on the side of HypE Esports to get a kill outside of Rinks. And it looks like he was gifted that because we did see Tommy Peppers backing out there. Didn't want to follow up. So, yeah, it looks like that was a conscious decision. It wasn't a steal from Fluff. Not sure why they opted to do that, but we'll have to see if it does pan out or not. Duero and Toika matching the push on the other side of the map, and it's looking like both teams going to trade the other side lane outer turret for now, within literally a second of each other there. And interesting that they're sending Rinks against Winter, the one magic resistance tank. The taunt does land. I never freeze coming in from the side. Rinks gonna flash over the wall. He will be safe. And again, the Ragnarok coming out very, very early from my never freeze here. Didn't look like there was any CC on him, but he's gonna have that down once again. The cooldown on Ragnarok fairly low, about a minute. Not the worst, but again, to constantly be using it like that doesn't really net them much, and it does alleviate the pressure, the possibility of a gank. And we are now seeing Winter go back to base. Duero coming into the mid lane here to stop this one for now. And we'll have to see how that lines up here. He will have to be extremely careful. Does have a Toika with the Black Shield, at least to nullify some of that poison damage, but I think they might be surprised by how much damage Rinks can really do here. And look at Toika's health just get shredded there. He walked into a shroom. The Solar Flare coming out, and Fluff actually going to pick himself up a second kill here. He's doing a lot of damage on this Leona, and looks like in the battle of supports it's going to be Fluff winning that one quite handily with the assistance of Rinks, and they might turn for the Baron here. They are clearing out vision. You can see right here there's not a lot of vision around Baron right now for the side of Rawr Yordlez. Mrs. Sarks is split pushing in the bot side, so yeah, I'm pretty sure that at this point Yordlez is aware it's being done here. And for the side of HypE, they've got enough shrooms that they're safe. Look at how quick Baron goes down. It just got started and it's already gone here. Duero able to finish off that extremely low mid lane turret. Finally, they have an advantage in turrets, but I don't think that's going to last very long, as we're going to see HypE pull off the Baron power play here. Mr. Serux looking to get one more for himself. Has to be careful he does not overstay. Are they going to throw the Enchanted Crystal Arrow? No, they aren't. So he's going to get that turret, get out safe as well. And Rawr Yordlez, very, very different Rawr Yordlez in the finals than what we've seen throughout the other 7 weeks of the league here. They're playing the macro game pretty well, but they're just losing so badly in lanes right now that they can't fight for any major objective that HypE decides to contest. And coming into the finals here, it did look like a bit of an underdog story on paper for HypE Esports here. They were the team who was third place. They did win against Pendulum. They did win against Glacial Academy, but it wasn't always the cleanest of wins. And then you look over at Rawr Yordlez and just look like they smashed right through Glacial in the semi-finals here. But come the finals, suddenly it's a very, very different ballgame. They're playing a much more measured pace. They're not able to run over HypE Esports, and HypE has been doing great in the early game here. And then now with Baron buff as well, you can see they very, very easily, quickly took that mid lane outer turret. They do have to be mindful though that they are getting played outplayed macro-wise. Mr. Saruk's opting to teleport into the top side. He's going to get the inner turret here matched by Rinks on the other side of the map. Neither of them have teleports available now, and we might see a 4v4 breakout for this Cloud Drake. An initiation coming in from Winter07. He gets a 2-3 man taunt, but is it going to be enough? He taunted Ray, and Ray's just shredding right now. Heroic Entrance does come across. He does get the 4-man knockup. Duero trying to pump the damage out, but he's not got the right guns available for him. Looking like he's holding Severum, and I think that's Shendam possibly. Not quite sure what his secondary gun is, but either way, it's not enough. And now Rinks taking the inhibitor. Mr. Sark's trying to match, but he's only on the inhibitor turret. We did see the Cloud Drake go down as well. Mr. Dirks now has to be careful. Tommy Peppers could just look to get a solo kill on him here. The flash in, the slows are being applied. Exhaust as well. Mr. Dirks looking for the turnaround, but the range on Ashe is just too big. He does get the wall though, and that's going to be hugely dangerous. But now Ray there as well. 280s, he's just shredding down. He does manage to get his first kill onto Tommy Peppers, but can he survive the living artillery? No, he cannot. Rinks now in the middle of the enemy base. Crescendum, Gravitum was the other gun. There we go. He gets rooted up, will go down, but it's a Toika taking the shutdown. The worst possible person for Rawr Yordlez to gift that 700 gold maximum bounty over to here. And it comes at the cost of both their Nexus turret. Their Nexus is now exposed. We could potentially see a backdoor coming in from the side of HypE Esports. And that means Rawr Yordlez is always going to have somebody nearby to make sure that they don't suddenly get backdoored and lose their Nexus. In that Dragon teamfight, we saw that despite being down a significant ton of gold, the fact that Rinks wasn't at that fight made it disgustingly even, and really both teams had a pretty good shot at doing it. Winter able to put out a bunch of disruption there, and Duero just pumping out the damage. Unfortunately, at the end of it, it ended up going the way of HypE Esports because they've got more carries, and if you can't reach the backline and burst them down, that issue is that they can keep pumping out damage. And while they did manage to access the backline, and Freeze and Winter really getting back there, they just don't have enough damage. Winter building very, very tanky after the Proto Belt, straight into the Adaptive Helm. Yes, it's great against Rinks to keep yourself alive, but not so great in trying to achieve the objective of making sure that you can burst down those carries. I never freeze as well. Not really able to get all that much damage off, so unfortunately just looking like if HypE's just liable to just win this, and it might have hit the point where HypE has already come online, hit their breakpoints. We are seeing sort of that 2 major item spike for the ADCs here. Runan's build, the Ruin King for Tommy Peppers. Really solid build. We're not seeing that Manamune build, which is starting to become extremely popular here for Ashes. For Ray on the cog, he's got the Blade of the Ruin King and Gwynsu's build as well. So in any fight they don't get burst down in the opening seconds of it, they're just going to ramp right up and just be able to put out tons and tons of damage into these team fights. And despite the sort of low kill game we've had, there's still actually quite a lot of action going on right now. We're seeing Ring split push once again on the Teemo, and that's his job. That's where he's hit. He's hit this point where no one can 1v1 him. Even 2v1 sometimes they can't pull it off. Interestingly enough, rather than letting him split push, they are actually going to make the call to group up and take this inner turret on the top side here. And Neverfuiz has to be careful he does not get pincered here. We see Mr. Sirks and Neverfuiz, but they're on the out. They're supposed to be the ones with the inside track, but they're actually the ones being forced out. They're getting caught out. The Solar Flare comes across. The Ragnarok coming out will save by Neverfuiz, but it's not going to be able to save Mr. Sirks at all. Winter diving into the backline with that heroic entrance will be able to get out, but does next to no damage whatsoever. Now the Glacial Prison coming down onto Toika. The Black Shield not coming out early enough. He's going to go golden with the Soul Shackles. Does manage to catch 3, and Duero pumping the damage. Just barely unable to find Fluff, gets smashed. Instead, it is going to be Toika going down to Tommy Peppers there, and Rinks He's had enough of these fights. He wants to end this. He's going for the Nexus turrets. Winter trying to get the taunt off. Can he find it? No, he can't. Winds of War across. And now it is going to be Duero coming in. Duero able to now force it out because he's got enough damage that they lose so much on the Nexus. And that's going to be Baron going down once again here for HypE Esports as their Blade of the Ruin King carriers are able to continue shredding down the Baron. 4-15 right now, the scoreline. And it's been one extremely one-sided match here for HypE Esports. And Rinks now 8-1-1, level 17, highest in the game by quite a significant amount. 2 levels up from anybody on the side of Rawr Yordlez, really, and a level up from Tommy Peppers as well, who has been the beneficiary of constantly getting solo lanes. And now with the Baron buff on all 5 members of HypE Esports, they can just look to push in and really force any lane here. That bot lane inhibitor will be coming up soon for the side of Rawr Yordlez, and it looks like HypE gonna go for the Drake instead, Cloud Drake. This will be their 3rd one. That's gonna be a 30% cooldown reduction on major ultimates. We've already seen that Solar Flare doing so much work in these fights. Fluff gets smashed on point with those to either secure kills or to secure picks here. And for the side of Rawr Yordlez, they've been doing a good job not grouping because I think they lose any fight where they completely group up here. And now Rinks getting collapsed on by everybody and their mothers here. All 5 going in. It's going to be a shutdown this time. It's going over to I Never Freeze, but the problem is Rinks wasn't carrying that 700 gold bounty anymore. That went over to HypE. He was only sitting on about 150 gold bounty. Mr. Saruk's going in. The flash from Ray, as aggressive as he is, going to be able to burn down HypE, but might be at the cost of his life. No, the Blade of the Ruin King is enough to keep him sustained. Windchill 7 is tanky, but not tanky enough. He will eventually go down. Only Duero left alive. He gets shredded as well. Triple for Ray. And was it a double? No, not quite a double for Tommy. He gets 1 only. And that's going to be the game. A surrender vote coming out from Rawr Yordlez. They know that it's already done and that HypE can just push in. And for the first time, we're seeing Rawr Yordlez with their backs up against a wall here. They've only lost 1 match in terms of games they played, but it's going to cost them because of that initial forfeit. They're now down 0-2 here going into the series. And I mean, it's almost inconceivable for me to say this, but Rawr Yordlez facing the possibility of a clean sweep here from HypE Esports. And we'll have to see what they can opt to do because honestly, I'm not sure how they go around fixing their problems here for Game 3. Their draft was fine. They had okay lanes. It was just execution. They found the lead in the bot lane. They had an okay even mid lane, and they had a really bad losing top lane. So I think number 1, either you ban out the Teemo or you need to give Mr. Saruk something that can handle the Teemo. They kind of knew that Teemo was going to be coming out because they banned the Maokai. There was a pretty good chance that Rinks was going to pick that. They ultimately opted to blind pick the set and then ran into the Teemo. So I think they need to pick something for Mr. Saruk in the top lane that can handle the Teemo, for 1. The second thing they need to sort of do is find some way to get I Never Freeze rolling. He has usually been a force with them in the early games, but he just wasn't able to do anything really in the early game there. Just no good lanes to gank. And Winter 7 in the mid lane did okay, but I mean, he didn't really dominate, and so I think either they pay more jungle attention, especially if he's going to be facing an ADC, or maybe put Winter in something more aggressive that can punish an ADC pick, or maybe send him back to bot lane. We have seen HypE play mid for Rawr Yordlez before as well. Whatever their decision might be, they are going to need to make some major changes in not only their draft, but in their mechanical gameplay and macro decisions in game. Or sorry, micro decisions, not macro, because they were controlling the map for most of the early game aside from that top lane. So more micro decisions and making sure they don't hemorrhage out the top lane like they did in game 2 here. And with that, we are going to head into an intermission break while we set up for game 3. So do stick around and watch game 3, because we might potentially see a clean sweep, or we might see the beginnings of a reversal here from Rawr Yordlez.